So what will people make of the budget beyond Westminster? The World Tonight's Paul Moss has spent the day gauging reaction in Middlesbrough.
When it comes to promises of economic growth, when the Chancellor says he's paving the way for a brighter future, few people will be hoping to see that as much as people here in Middlesbrough and indeed in the wider Teesside region. This is an area which still has very high unemployment, where wages are low by national standards, where many people are living on benefits and also using the public services which have seen cuts over the last few years. So what to make of today's budget? Well, I'm joined here by two local figures. Tom Blenkinsop is Operations Director of the Trade Union Community, which represents people in various sectors, but particularly the steel industry. And also with me, I have Chris McDonald. He's the CEO of Materials Processing Institute. That's a company which works in research and innovation in metals. Chris, first of all, what did you think of the budget overall?
I was looking at in the budget for measures that would support the Tees Valley region, support business, and there were some announcements there, but the budget lacked, I think, in some extent, a coherent narrative. There were some really specific measures. The kind of general direction wasn't mapped out as well as I would have wanted to see.
Tom Blenkinsop, the Chancellor started by talking about the hard-working people in this country, the strivers who he said this budget was dedicated to. You represent people who I suppose would consider themselves hard workers. Were you happy with the budget?
I, like Chris, was looking for measures which would help the Teesside economy. I think it was a missed opportunity today. I think the Chancellor knows he's got a lot more slack in the system. Today, what he did is decided, rather than spend on services which, across the political spectrum and left or right or wherever you come from, people acknowledge that we need to spend more on the NHS.
Well, there was money being thrown at the NHS, money for local authorities, money for education.
I still think there was more money for potholes than schools, and I wouldn't be surprised if some schools declare themselves as potholes in order to receive more funding.
Chris McDonald, Tom Blenkinsop there jokingly referring to the extra money for potholes, but there was quite a lot of money for infrastructure, wasn't there? Roads, public transport.
Transport is a big issue for us, but what I was also really interested in as well was digital infrastructure, and there was some funding announced for digital innovation, incredibly important.
What about the raising of the personal allowance for tax, which effectively operates as a tax cut? It will go to lower wage earners, there'll be more of them who don't pay any tax, but also higher wage earners now may not be paying higher rate tax. Is that good for Britain?
I mean, it took me by surprise. I don't think it's something people are asking for particularly, but the Chancellor's made that a priority.
Tom Blenkinsop, where are you on raising the tax allowance?
Basically, I would have used the slack to fund the services better. The Chancellor thinks differently. He is a conservative, hawkish, fiscal Phil, as he calls himself, Chancellor, and he wants to do what Tories do, which is cut tax.
Now, the Chancellor's promised extra money to make universal credit work. That was widely trailed beforehand. Do you think that's going to keep happy the people here who were very worried about what would happen when they migrated to universal credit?
Well, there's massive problems with universal credit. I've come across them myself. The Chancellor has put his hands up and said, yeah, you know what, I'll go back and I'll get 2.7 billion and fill that gap. What he hasn't told everyone is that he's cutting the entire welfare bill by 7 billion, which leaves those same people that he's saying he's helping with his right hand 4.3 billion short with his left hand.
Of course, the Chancellor himself has said that all these figures, all these numbers, all these promises and plans will be as nothing if there's no deal on Brexit. Then he's going to have to come back and do another budget all over again. Chris McDonald, is that something people here in Teesside are worried about? A no-deal Brexit, or are people sanguine about it?
Well, from a business perspective, the lack of time between now and the date of departure is a real concern. Businesses in the Tees Valley are manufacturing businesses, they're big exporters, they're very well connected. We've got a massive chemicals industry here. So yes, Brexit is a big concern for these businesses. They accept that we're leaving, but what they need is to understand on what terms we're leaving.
Chris McDonald, Tom Blenkinsop, thanks both very much indeed.